YouTube, and happy eclipse season. I wanted to do a little bit of an astrology chat to talk today about the eclipse season that we're just starting into today, and a little bit about my personal relationship with these eclipses, and how they're showing up for me in my own journey. And I would love to hear below in the comments if you have thoughts, how the eclipse season is showing up for you in your life, and what you're looking forward to. So this eclipse season feels particularly potent for me, I think because of my own birth chart, and the recent journey that I've been on. So the eclipse, today's eclipse is in Cancer, which one is a cardinal sign. I have a shit ton going on in cardinal signs. I have Cancer Moon, Cancer Rising, Aries, Mars and Venus, and Capricorn, Uranus and Capricorn. So a lot of cardinal energy in my chart. And then specifically in Cancer, like I said, Moon and Rising. So there's a lot of Cancer going on. There's a lot of Moon stuff going on. And I think that's particularly resonates for me right now because I have been doing a lot of shadow work, a lot of subconscious sort of ego releasing work. And so it feels like a powerful time to have this eclipse, eclipses in Cancer. So thinking about the subconscious versus conscious self, or the sort of inner self versus what I reflect to the world, I was thinking about how my birth card is the Magician. And if you don't know how to calculate your birth card, I can leave a link below. But I think that makes a lot of sense for me as my sort of external self, or even as a mask that I wear a lot. I think the Magician is like sort of what I want to be, but also is how I project or how I try to be. But in a lot of ways, it's almost like my protective self. So the Magician energy protects me. It's something that I value, that kind of will-driven magic, the doing rather than feeling. I think my ego kind of clings to that Magician energy as something that is familiar, as something that is possible to control, that is more in my control. To me, I think the Magician can feel like strength, but it can also, not strength in the tarot sense, but just strength. But it can also be avoidance. It can be a means of avoidance. So I've been taught, like everyone is in this culture, to devalue the energetic or sacred feminine, to devalue emotions, to devalue social things. Like, I think that with the Magician being my mask or my protective self, when I say that, what I mean is that, like, for example, I'll make kind of self-conscious jokes around, like, oh, I'm super antisocial, I don't have friends, I don't like people are, bleh, who wants people? But in some ways, I think when I do that, when I don't want to deal with, like, relationships or feelings, I'm almost, like, imitating a kind of masculinity as a non-binary person, because I don't want to be seen as female, because I tend to be perceived as female, so I'm going the other direction, even though that has nothing to do with my actual gender. But, like, I think sometimes I will portray or project this kind of badass, not, unfeeling, kind of, like, do it all for myself kind of person, which is part of me. And I think it's, like, it's important to recognize it's part of me, but it's also really, like, an ego-driven part of me, rather than a deeper inner side. So since November of last year. I've been doing a lot of work and study and learning around tarot and around astrology and around like some work around releasing ego more recently, and accessing my intuition. And one of the things that I've learned through that process is how I perceived the water element. Like, I have this really weirdly warped sense of the water element and what water is, and what it means to be a Pisces sun. But like before I knew astrology, I just thought of myself as a Pisces. Like I remember just being like, I'm not a Pisces. Pisces are like airy fairy and creative and emotional, and like that is not me. And something I've learned through actual astrology is that like a lot of the structure and the practicality that I put forward in my own life is actually really common as a coping mechanism for people who are highly sensitive, for people who are empathic, people who have a lot of water, specifically with the Cancer. So I'm Cancer, Moon and Rising, Pisces Sun. I also have Mercury in a water sign, and Pluto and Saturn in water signs. So I have a lot of water in my chart, including some of the more difficult planets. And I think that it makes sense that I would form certain coping mechanisms to try to like balance against that. But also I've learned through learning about Cancer and learning about how Cancer is in some ways stronger in my chart than Pisces, that it's all about my kind of shell, like it's all about my protection. And that really resonated for me and made sense, like that I think safety and hiding, being able to hide, is really important to me because my emotions are super strong, or because not even my emotions, but because I'm so sensitive to other people's emotions and to the emotional environment, that safety and protection are really important to me. And so in some ways I use this like magician archetype as a mask to protect myself and to pull over myself and to see myself as. I think like I have tended to view my own story as being all about overcoming my emotional weakness, getting past being emotional, and really it's just been a story of like building up my ego over time, becoming more egoic, and then pushing all the emotions into the shadow, into my shadow self, like pushing things down, putting them aside. It feels like a journey up a hill and like I'm doing better, but it's like, what is all that stuff that's underneath? What is all that stuff in the closet? And so this quote from the Many Moons workbook for this eclipse really resonated with me. Stalwart structures our ego may have depended on for safety may begin dissolving or evolving into more sustainable and flexible arms to hold us as we work. So the structures that have protected my ego might have done their job, but now I'm at a place where I want to shift past that, and I want to find the arms that will hold me as I work. So in contrast to the Magician, today I pulled for my daily card the High Priestess, which of course is the card right after the Magician. And one thing that I have learned through tarot and astrology is how to connect more with my inner High Priestess. And I learned that I'm actually really intuitive. Like, I did not think of myself as an intuitive person at all. But I started doing tarot. I started slinging cards. I realized that I really connected with tarot. And I also realized that, like, I really connect with people and enjoy connecting with people through counseling, through providing advice, through listening. Like, I've always been that person that everybody comes to for advice, and a lot of my work is actually about counseling. Like, as a manager, I provide a lot of coaching, I provide a lot of support. Some of the stuff I'm best at is actually rooted in relationships. and understanding people's emotions and coaching them through those emotions, but it does take a lot of energy. So I think that's like the Cancer feeling, and particularly strong right now in Cancer eclipse season, is that it's a lot of emotion, but it's also like a need to protect, a need to use energy wisely. Another thing that I've noticed with the tarot is that like I tend to resist the kind of social side of the cup. So whenever I pull up a cup card, I'm always like, well, I know this could be about relationships or it could be about friends, but like, can I twist it and make it something else? You know, I don't want to see people. Why are you telling me to see people? And I think like I'm coming to realize how that is related to the ego protection, like how you know, I have a long history of kind of expecting the worst, and like I hate being embarrassed. So I think there's this kind of like fear of embarrassment or awkwardness or what might happen in a social situation where my ego wants to protect me and wants to say, oh God, no social interaction, let's avoid that. You know, I'm not social, I don't need people. And so this eclipse season for me is really like not necessarily a culmination, but a milestone for a lot of transitions in my life. I know that you can kind of, in this eclipse season, we can look back to where we were in the last eclipse season in January, and there might be kind of echoes or reflections. And I remember feeling like really full with the tarot, really like aligned and intuitive, and like starting to accept some changes in my personal relationships and my needs in those relationships. And then there was a lot of hard stuff in my life in February and March, and relationships ending and changing. And so I think for me, like this eclipse season is really processing a lot of that, reflecting on that, and reflecting on the element of water, and like what does it mean to be so water dominant, and what is water about? You know, water has so many different states or phases, like and I hadn't really thought about how I connect to water, how my own fluidity in a lot of areas, gender, disability, like so many areas where I'm kind of in a liminal space or a fluid space. How does that connect to the water in my chart? You know, I used to think like earth is my element because I really ground through earth, but I think it's because I am so watery, like I need something to ground myself in, because water is really fluid and it can change state, and it can change a lot. Like when I was resisting being a Pisces, and when I was thinking like, oh, you know, this sign is like, it's very dreamy and it's not very strong and it's not very grounded, but like water is super strong. Like water is deep needs and emotions, and it can be a really tough element. It can deal with a lot of shit. So like water is not necessarily just like maybe I was confusing with air, I don't know, but you know, water can be waves, water can be ice. So like I'm reflecting on all the different ways I can be, all the different states that I have in my own sort of fluidity, and how water, and again, the Many Moons workbook mentioned this, like how water can change to protect itself. So how if water gets too cold, it turns into ice, it turns into this solid thing. Water can make huge waves. And another thing from the workbook I liked is that she talks about water protectors. Doesn't specifically mention Standing Rock, but I think it's implied. Comparing the work of water protectors to the invisible femme labor or devalued femme labor. And that was super powerful to me. Like I think that my understanding of emotion as sort of like less serious or less important, like that's internalized anti-femme thought or anti-femme sentiment, and avoiding that area of my life, avoiding those energies, is actually avoiding some really powerful work that can also be scary. but it's avoiding, to me, femme is such a like important part of myself, and so it's like how much power could I have that I am avoiding? Like how much can I embody that I am just letting to the side by avoiding, by self-protecting, by like inhabiting this Cancer place, and being in my shell. Like I need to balance that, I think. So that was a lot about me, but I think my challenge for this eclipse season is actually like breaking through the other side, breaking past the Magician. Sometimes the Magician is useful, but like getting to that High Priestess place, letting go of some of my protective layers, releasing some of my ego for more supportive structures to take its place. And I did a reading that I'll leave the spread below. I did a reading for this eclipse season that suggested that the part of my life that the eclipse will touch is the Seven of Swords reversed. And I thought that was really interesting because I think of the Seven of Swords reversed as being all the lies that you tell yourself, all the like internal shadowy, like how are you deceiving yourself? How are you being dishonest to yourself? And then in that reading, I also got that the theme of the eclipse for me would be the sun reversed. So I feel like it's this invitation to shine light into that shadow, to think of what is positive about the deeper, harder shit, and how to light that up. So I'm going to go take a bath with this Goddess of the Sea bath soak from Sam Wish on Etsy. I don't know if that's gonna focus. I'm excited. I'm gonna take a nice long bath and think about some of this stuff. So I hope you have a chance to do some sort of practice for the eclipse season yourself, and let me know in the comments how it's going. If you enjoy this kind of astrology talk, let me know what you'd like to hear more about, and don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, thanks so much.